we're in for a treat. I got to go around with Kyle this morning and look, I'm just so impressed, both at Rosedale and here, and everybody I've talked to so far about the progressive nature of the management here, right? I'm on the second place where somebody's intentionally rolling as a mechanism of dollar spot control. Let me tell you, in the entire country of the United States, there can't be two people honestly doing that intentionally. If it's happening, it's because they're doing it, they're bumping into it. Let's just put it that way. Oh, I'm just rolling the approach and I got less dollar spot. I mean, these are well-proven things, but when you have the arsenal of chemistry that we have in the United States, that you just, like there's 15 products that I can spray. What do I gotta do this? We were the tea guy, mows teas 3 days a week. Yep. The other two, maybe 3, he rolls teas. So we're dedicating, staff members, and this is, to reducing our reliance on chemical pesticides. A very interesting, and I think what it's good is to not put we'll have chemicals working longer if we utilize alternative strategies, because we're less likely to develop resistance. And that is part of, people say, oh, well, especially sales guys, I'm gonna sell this. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not gonna sell yes, you're gonna sell longer. You're gonna have chemistry and you're gonna have a public that appreciates, you hope, that you're making decisions to be less reliant on these things. And I think that's where my relationship with Civitas came in. Right? We were working on the Bethpage State Park, trying to have a golf course we didn't have to spray pesticides. On Long Island, Poa annua greens, 60,000 rounds of golf, come on. And they didn't want to spray anymore. So we did an experiment back in 2000 where we had 6 greens on the green course where we didn't spray them with any fungicides after being sprayed for 60 years. Guess what happened? They died. By July and August, they were dead. And then the second year that they died, Dave Catalano, who ran the place, said, do we have to watch them die again? Have you not learned enough? So we started to make adjustments to the project. And then in 2007, Rainy Dragala and the Civitas people came to me and said, we think we got something that might be able to help you. And at that time, I'll tell you, no one was spraying pigments. No one was spraying pigments in 2007. I actually made the comment at a conference that at some point, salesmen are going to show up with like the Sherwin-Williams guys saying, what color do you want for your turf? And it turns out it's exactly what happened. So I think back then when we first started and Kyle was involved and this place was involved early on when it came out to start spraying it everywhere. It was a Canadian product. Right? It's good. It does this, that, and the other thing. And here's what I can tell you. They didn't know what they were doing when they released the product. I can say it now because it's been out all these years and we figured out a whole bunch. I mean, I traveled the country, our country. I traveled this country for a while talking about this thing. And there are ways and strategies you have to go through to use a product like this that further reduces your reliance on other chemistries, that further reduces your need for fertilizer, that further gives you a little more traffic tolerance, as well as some of the best microdochium control that researchers can find, parallel to what pesticides can do. But it does challenge when you get on it, like Jeff was on it yesterday at Rosedale, he makes adjustments around all of his management practices just to keep using that product because he sees the value in so many different ways. It's used in a much more typical way here, shoulders of the season, which is sort of how it's evolved over time. And at a place like Jeff, he's spraying at fairways, tees, and not greens. I think he's doing greens in the summer, in the winter time. And he's the shoulder greens. But through the year, he's spraying fairways in the heat. So this is what we like about it. It's like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it lots of different ways. Now, we're going to talk about that stuff, but there's a lot to see. This is quite a property. A multiple certified Audubon cooperative sanctuary. Another indication that these people are not just talking about environmental stuff, they're actually walking. They're doing the walk here. So not an easy thing to do, and they've, of course, been very intentional about it. Now, I got to tell you, I'm going to be yelled at for this, but I know it's a problem to cut a tree, but I've been on 2 golf courses that I would love to see a few thousand trees removed. I don't know that we have to Oakmont every place, but I look out here and the first thing I think about is, I can't see this place. I can't see it. I see the forest, and I can tell you I just drove a little loop. There's all kinds of changes in elevation and landforms here that would be accentuated with that. But, you know, this park, I mean, you can still have a parkland golf course. You don't have to Oakmont the damn thing, right? But for sure, there's ways of it. They're going to move a green at Rosedale, rebuild a green at Rosedale, rather than because they don't want to be bothered trying to get trees cut down. They're just going to spend money to move the green. Let's put it somewhere we can grow grass and not bother fighting the trees. That is a place where trees, you know, become a challenge, right? Big challenge there. Okay, so Kyle, let's wander over to the first pollinator area over there, and then we'll get going. One of the great things about doing these, and I've been doing these walkabout golf courses with, you know, pros like Kyle for a really long time. And now I get to do it at the national conference every year. I stopped wanting to sit in a classroom. I really enjoy getting out and about. And also, I think it's really good for superintendents to see other people's work without golf clubs in your hand. The problem with golf is you don't pay attention to anything else when you're playing golf. In fact, there's actually been research done that demonstrates how little golfers pay attention to the natural surroundings that they're in, right? They basically are so obsessed about the next shot. Unless they're at Pebble, unless somebody's looking up all the time to the coastline or something, they're engaged in their shot and they don't notice the natural world around them. So it's good for us. This is sort of the way it used to be back in the 50s and 60s, in the old turf days back then. You didn't play golf at meetings, you walked about. So as we go around, you know, what I hope happens is I say enough to get you thinking about things, that you either ask us or the folks that are here to answer questions, especially Kyle, who knows the place. 20-something years of being here.
21, yeah. This
21 years. Year. And so this is a nice little spot that they preserved for the people who built the place back in the day. And Kyle, you know, smartly said, hey, let's keep this thing. Why don't you talk a little bit about the conversation involved in just doing this?
It was, you know, when they redid the clubhouse, this was torn down. This actually used to be our old cart barn. And before that, it was part of the original farmhouse. And, you know, went back and forth. Some members wanted just to destroy it. It was an eyesore for a year or so. And I had the idea with our gardener to turn it into a pollinator garden using basically, you know, local plants that are meant to, you know, be in this environment, very low inputs, and you know, it's turned out really, really good. Native, basically just a bunch of native plants for the area, and encouraging butterflies, hummingbirds, and other pollinators.
And the best part about it, it's not on the golf course.
Yeah.
When you gotta listen to people say, what the hell is that? I hit my ball in that stupid thing. Will you cut that stuff? Will you know what I mean? And you said this to me when we were out there, that these areas that we would call naturalized can be problematic, right? They get tall, they get in the way, they disrupt play. And that is where, you know, there's the conflict between function of what this place is supposed to do. And you know, you'll see this talked about during the Ryder Cup. The Bethpage State Park is in fact a state park. They got all kinds of wildlife. It's 1,500 acres, 5 golf courses. It's a massive place. And they're gonna talk about all the wildlife and all the environmental stuff. None of it on the golf courses. None of it. When you're putting that many people through a golf course, you don't want other people or wildlife out there or any of that sort of stuff. So a lot of the stuff is around the periphery of the property. It's just a lot easier that way. So how many acres is the whole place, Kyle?
I believe we're about 165 acres.
Okay, and so, and you're managing, oh, look at this. Isn't this great? This is what I mean. So here we are rolling fairways, and I can tell you, let's start with how you do it. What's your operation rolling fairways?
So same thing with the tee. So we typically try to roll 2 days a week if we're mowing 3. And in the shoulder seasons when growth isn't as much, we are rolling 3 days and cutting 2 days a week. So we're putting something on tees, greens, and fairways every single day. We cut and roll greens 7 days a week for the most part, aside again from April and October, late October, and that's the plan. No growth regulators, so we're very cognizant of how much N is going out, and we collect clippings on greens. We monitor clippings on tees and fairways. Those clippings get left on the surface and blown, so each day we'll blow, put that back in, and just cycle those nutrients back into the soil.
So how long does it take the guy rolling to roll the fairways versus how long it takes to mow the fairways?
Rolling it's about the same time, but we have 2 operators mowing, so he can roll faster than we can cut.
Okay, so one guy takes 4 hours.
Yeah.
2 guys take 4 hours. To mow. So it's 8 hours. So it's half the time.
It's a little more. It's about 5.5 hours to mow.
It's about 5. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's about 10 hours and only 4 hours to roll.
Correct.
Will they start? He starts first thing in the morning.
Yep. First thing in the morning.
And gets out
there.
Yep.
So he's already done the back 9, and now he's heading to the front.
Okay. All right. And so no mow today, just a straight up roll.
Correct.
And that is part of your dollar spot control.
Essentially dollar spot and helping with thatch. We do find that it does help with thatch.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And the same for the tees. So you're rolling greens, tees, and fairways as much as you possibly can.
Yes.
How about a pull? Are you guys able to do that? Are we able to roll?
What's the difference between your starting time and the first tee time?
Hour and a half.
So you have an hour and a half.
Hour and a half. But some of my guys will start at 5, so they'll actually start 2 hours ahead. Not the fairway roller, but my tee operator, he likes to start early, so he starts before everyone even gets here. Yeah, to get a head start.
And 30 guys. That's what I mean. I mean, so it can be operationalized, right, to do these things. You just need the resources. But I know a lot of places with that many people that don't do those things because they just spray. And then they do, they're doing something else. So maybe something that they don't need to be doing. But it seems like you guys are very focused on that here. And it's a culture, right? In some ways, it's a culture.
It is a culture,
and I think, I got to tell you, I don't know, the nature of the people who are the members here, but I bet they like the roll they get from these fairways, because we started some fairway rolling work that shows pretty clearly the firmness goes up dramatically when you start rolling like this. Now, I got to tell you, where we are, we couldn't do it as much like this. We've had so much rain, but you guys have been a little bit drier. Does the rainfall and the soil moisture sometimes affect how you do this, or have you found you've just been able to go right through it?
We usually go right through. Now, if we get an inch of rain 2 hours before we start, we've got a few pockets that puddle up, so we'll still roll. We just may not roll over that standing water.
So that's back to that. Does every part of every fairway get rolled, or are there some, like Jeff had some Humpty Dumpties yesterday at Rosedale where he's like, I don't roll that hill. You know what I mean? I don't need to roll
it all.
You roll it all?
Yep.
Okay. And so it's built in a way that also makes it easy to navigate.
Correct. Yeah.
This guy designed this place. The boys? Jack?
Originally, and then McBroom did a redesign in 2005.
Okay.
2004, 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then the greens got sort of Humpty Dumpty.
They changed some stuff up, moved some bunkers around, changed some tees, changed some fairway lines.
Yeah, so we're gonna see a bunch of, we're gonna talk, a question, go ahead.
I just have a question.
Let's hear
Kyle, about the rolling.
Let's hear it.
A, do you guys change the pattern that you go, like in terms of like the, you go the same way every time like this, and you see wear patterns?
For the no wear patterns.
No wear pattern?
No.
And do you change the order of that you roll the fairways? Just out of curiosity for dollar spot control, like if you're rolling the first fairway at 5 a.m. and the dew returns, does that have an impact on the disease?
It does, and I'll say that for sure. We have noticed, because this year we're off the back because they're still working on the front with the bunker project that we're partway through. Normally, when we're playing off the front, back 9 fairways and tees always have slightly more pressure. And I think that's exactly why, because they have an extra 2 hours of leaf wetness every day. So Thursdays, it's usually 1 day a week we flip the 9s just so we can fly mow and do some other, usually spraying of the fairways and fly mow. We try to do that once a week on the other 9. But aside from that, it's, you know, four days plus the weekends where we're going off the front.
This is brilliant. You see, that's an excellent question. Exactly right. When you're out there early, go ahead.
So Kyle, you're saying you can see a reduction. So a reduction of 1 app for prior to, like maybe you're doing 4 apps a season on your fairways.
I would say at least one. And I'll be honest, it's, you know, this whole program doesn't necessarily save us any money, because the fertility and the biologicals that we're spending money on isn't necessarily saving us money. We're just putting out less chemical. That's the bottom line, right?
So less fungicides.
Less fungicides, less synthetic fertilizer, for sure.
So do you spray synthetic fungicides on the fairways?
We do, yes.
We do, okay,
We will,
because
yes.
right now Civitas is on there.
Correct. We
Right,
have
just
two
a week
apps,
ago.
2 apps of Civitas at 350, 300 mils.
300 mils. So that's the full rate. That's over the full.
So that's on greens. Tees and fairways get 150 mils.
Okay, so that's the lower rate.
They're a lower rate.
Okay.
And they're bi-weekly, so 2 apps in May.
Yes.
And usually 1 app in June, and then we'll start our synthetic fungicides usually end of June, mid-June, depending on the weather and what sort of season we're getting.
Okay.
So right now there's nothing on the tees or fairways or greens other than today. So today's our first application. We have
Maxtima, you said?
Maxtima has gone out today on greens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we would have been spraying fairways and tees as well this week, but our sprayer broke down yesterday. So now we're using our fairway sprayer on.
Welcome to the real world. All right, let's walk. Come on. This is great.
We used to spray 5 to 6 fungicide applications on tees and fairways. Yes, for
And
years.
now you're down to 4.
And now we're down to 3 to 4.
3 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of things to like about this, and one of the things that I think many people are surprised about, what I like about this, is the weight. I think we became an industry very worried about the weight of mowers, right? We became lightweight mower things. We became, you know, you got to cultivate to relieve compaction all the time, blah, blah, blah. And I got to tell you, our thinking has changed so dramatically that now we're doing a study looking at how rolling controls crabgrass. We started rolling areas 5, 6 times a week where we had crabgrass pressure, and all of a sudden 2 things happened. There was no crabgrass, and the existing grass there was better for being rolled. And one of the things that's the most fascinating to me is we stopped the rolling. We did an experiment for a couple of years, and then we stopped. A year after we stopped, the turf was still better, and there were less weeds in it. So now we're starting to research what the hell's going on. Are we affecting the crabgrass seed bank? Are we affecting germination? We're now focusing on just rolling intensely during the early emergence period for crabgrass. And the other thing I'll say about rolling, that's sort of the extreme of where we are. But what we really understand now is that traffic and rolling helps reduce, where are you, Kyle? Organic matter. Yeah. Oh, okay. Organic matter.
Well, I was going to, it just kind of popped in my head, Frank. I think about when I was superintendent, I was not rolling.
No.
But we were managing thatch with top dressing fairways.
That's right.
And the effort and money that went into that, if I would have known this,
Yes.
oh my God, it might have been a...
And again, it's really, honestly, we have some clubs in the Saratoga racetrack area that are, Saratoga National in particular, where they put drainage in the fairways. It's a low area. The rough isn't drained very well. So whenever there's moisture, they tell the people, drive on the fairways. So, and they're actually encouraging people all the time to drive on the fairways. And the fairways that get driven on the most had the least amount of organic matter. We started sampling out there. Cart traffic was, so then we said, where do you have thatch problems? The approach, right? The approach. I was like, why don't you roll the approach? So what he did is he bought wider rollers to be more productive, right? The triplex rollers on the Salscos, and just rolls out into the approach now, and has eliminated the need for coring and sanding. Now, the other thing that happens is you gotta grow less grass. When Kyle says, I monitor growth in the fairways, I monitor growth on the tees for how I want to fertilize and how much I need to mow. That's, you know, the whole thing on putting greens with collecting clippings is one way to manage growth. You're monitoring the growth of these fairways, And that is the other way you control organic matter. Listen, are the microbes that you're feeding helping break it down? It's entirely possible they're contributing to the degradation because of organic matter here, because you're putting on a whole bunch of stuff that keeps a vibrant microenvironment, right?
Correct.
Let's go through it. Kelp, molasses.
Fish hydrolysate.
Okay, fish.
We use a lot of amino acid nitrogen.
Okay.
Fulvic acid, humic acid.
Okay. All
What
different
else?
products, or are they
Yeah,
in one?
all different products.
All different products.
We get it raw and do a lot of the mixing on site. And that's how we're able to basically afford it. These products are all coming from Australia. It's an Australian company.
Okay.
And we bring it in from them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so those
Most
sorts
of them are.
Yeah, those sorts of things, and one in particular, seaweed, is one that we really had a lot of success with over the years. When it comes to biostimulants, there's no more data on any biostimulant than there is on seaweed. There's absolute value in many cases to use those kinds of products. But in this case, we're really thinking about not having to, I think it was funny. Kyle said, yeah, the membership wanted us to top dress, which, as you know from yesterday, or some of these guys might know from yesterday, I mean, what I want to know is, how the hell does a golfer know what top dressing does? Can somebody answer me a question about why would a golfer come and say, because in their mind, they talk to other golfers, and this is the definition of people who have enough information to be dangerous.
The internet is Twitter.
Twitter, now AI.
Johnny Miller.
Are
dangerous combination.
That's right. So let's not get rolled over here. So the conversation now about organic matter is where the industry has started to go, moving away from chemical soil testing, moving towards physical soil testing. And in particular, love this. It's a beautiful thing watching that roller work, isn't it? Must be like you guys watching a Zamboni or something, right? So now that we can test, the USGA's developed a standardized method for organic matter management. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the putting greens. But now we have ways of monitoring our organic matter levels that allow us to be more strategic in the time we spend sanding, coring, needle tining, venting, verticutting. Where are your issues in your putting surfaces? And don't just keep doing that because you've always done that. That's what, I've been coming up to Canada for the better part of 30 years, and I'm pretty sure I said that when I first got here. And there was, my first comment was, what the hell are you using so much potassium for? And I almost never got invited back. There was like a religious connection to the use of potassium in this country. I also confronted this in Maryland, and they never invited me back. Once I said stop with the potassium, they were like, who's this? Get out of here. And of course, that early research we did, Micah Woods and I, and then Dave Moody and I, led to the development of the MLSN strategy for interpreting soil tests, which has sort of completely changed the way we think about managing soil chemistry in a much more simplistic way, where, if the plant has enough, adding more doesn't help. If the plant has enough, adding more doesn't help. And so how do you know if it has enough? Well, you have to interpret the numbers that come out of a soil test. And I can tell you, all the salesmen can cover their ears now. Soil test was the most brilliant way to sell fertilizer ever designed by any industry, and we fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and sinker. I don't know what to tell you. And the reason I'm happy to say it is I see more and more companies moving away from it or thinking about other ways of thinking about the soil. And I think Kyle represents sort of a more sort of holistic view of it, that I can add things, and I think what you said to me was, this place was struggling a little bit at periods of time, and as you've incorporated some of these practices in, you've seen the results from them. Right. I mean, you were spraying 5 or 6 times, now you're saying you're spraying 3 or 4 times, in simple terms, right? Yeah. And I mean, look at this place. I mean, it was like in Rosedale. I could try to criticize it, but I'd be stupid to do that, right? So let's wander over to 9. Is it 9, Kyle? Sure, yeah, let's do that. What do you think, Timber? You ready to move, buddy? So this is sand. This is a sand-based system this way of an expansion, and this is the, I guess, the old push-up surface. So these were built with USGA sand, and in a typical, what you see in a profile, right? I mean that's. And here's the interesting thing. Now that we're doing organic matter testing, right? And we do 246 centimeters, right? That's about the size of the core that you'll be taking out. And if you notice, it really can encapsulate, in this case, you got roots. This is good. It's June. Now it's just a war of attrition, right? It's like the heat's gonna take them, the summer patch to take all that pythium, everything that's in there. And the plant is no longer investing energy in growing those things because it's so hot, it just needs solar panels and just has to find a way to cool itself, right? So that's where water management comes in. So, you look at this, and the first thing, I think is, look at how nice and uniform this is. I mean, this was built when?
2004.
Okay, so you got 11 years, and I see just an incredibly uniform profile here. I mean, whatever you're doing, at least on the sand side here, seems to be working well. Yep. And I guess the question is, with all different types of, you have different types of greens out here.
Yes.
Are you able to manage them all the same now?
We do now.
You do now. How long does that take?
Other than a bit of moisture, so moisture still needs to be managed differently with the sand. Okay. Sand just has a little bit more, they dry out a little bit more, so they get a little more hand watering. Yeah.
As you'd expect, right? Yeah. Because you got a foot of sand in these new areas, yep. And in these, I'm gonna go, am I good here?
Yep. Yeah, you're good there, yeah.
All right. Ooh, somebody's got a cigar already? Man, I think I got a whiff of a cigar. So there you go. So there, now, okay, so you've got a foot of sand versus 8 inches of sand. You'd think, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, another 4 inches is another 4 inches of gravity pulling that shit down, right? Even though it's the same sand, right? I'm assuming you're top dressing with a USGA sand, so it's the same there. And that's why, to a certain extent, they can be managed the same. I mean, in my mind, once you get enough where you got 4 inches of sand, my question becomes, what the hell are you hollow tide coring for? Why are you doing that? Do you want to torture your golfers? Do you want to torture your workers? I promise you, no one ever likes doing it. Well, I think they like doing it. No one likes cleaning it up, right? Or having to walk the whole place. So what we've learned is there are so many other ways to address organic matter management on these surfaces that the old traditional, hollow tine, spring and fall, verticut during the year with just sanding is one way to go, but we're finding that's not always you don't need to pull a core. If you've got sand there, what are you doing? And especially the madness is, oh, let's pull a core on our USGA greens and take it off. And then haul a whole pile of sand and put it back on. Somebody's going to have to explain that logic to me.
And then pound it with end to recover.
And yeah. I mean, there's a whole variety of things that occur. So again, look. That's the bigger one. I mean, this is pretty good, right? And so here's, and also he's almost down into the push-up end. Yep. On the other side. So I wouldn't touch a thing. If these things are draining well, so then the question becomes, what are you managing? Well, when it comes to playability, that's pretty much the whole ball game. Since we started leaving this green tissue on the top as part of the organic matter sample, we're starting to learn that a lot of the performance characteristics we want from our surfaces is happening right up there at the bottom of the verdure, till maybe a centimeter in. So a lot of the work for enhancing performance is right there. That's it. This is what the new organic matter testing is going to teach us about how to manage this. We don't know yet. But here's what I can tell you. If you have firm surfaces, you can get them as fast as you want them. if people want speed, the way to get speed is make them firm. Because when they're firm, you get the most out of the mower and the most out of the roller. Right? I was laughing about this yesterday. Think about how you set a mower. You set it on a steel plate. Firm, solid steel plate, and then you put it on a sponge. And then it's like, well, how come I can't do this? And how come it's like that? And I try to do this and it doesn't get faster. And then we do all these other things, like we verticut and we sand. And of course, when you look at that on its face, it's great, as long as it's not too disruptive, right? I just don't believe they have such a short golf season up here. I wouldn't do anything to adjust how much they could play, for me. At a private course, where you don't make any more money if they play more here.
Nope.
Right? Nobody's making any more money at a private club if they play more. Now, maybe if you go pay and play, you're making more money when people play more. So there's no push. You manage to the play that you have. If you can get the surfaces that they want with what you have, what we've found is less sand the better, the less disruption the better, the less growth the better. But if you don't have enough growth for 45,000 rounds, you're going to find out pretty quick, right? So it's that fine balance of clipping volume, understanding how much growth you're getting. Yep. No growth regulators 2 places in a row. Who else isn't using growth regulators? Okay, see what I mean? This is very interesting. Just a little bit. You're using them? Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so what I was saying to Kyle is, one of the primary uses of growth regulators are to deal with the release of nitrogen that comes from this organic matter, the release of nitrogen that comes from here that we don't add. How much nitrogen on these greens, do you know?
0.2 of a pound so far this year.
How much do you think you'll put on in a year?
We're usually between 1.5 pounds and 2, sometimes a little bit less, but yeah, right around that 1.5 pounds a year.
5 years ago, it was pretty standard 3 pounds, honestly.
We've been up to 6 pounds for those years early on when we were, established, especially on the sand greens. That just struggled and struggled and struggled. We were just, pounding it to them because they couldn't handle the traffic, right?
That's exactly right. And I think early on, once greens mature, the nutrient management's going to be should be different. Yeah. But once they mature, now you're at less than 2 pounds. I mean, if I would have said only 2 pounds 5 to 10 years ago, they would have been as funny as the potassium comment, right? No one was really thinking this way. And I think that's why we had too much N, and so all the coring and sanding and stuff we were doing was justified because we were growing too much grass. Simple as that. One could argue. And so what I like is, okay, you don't want to change a lot of things, that's fine. Add more traffic. It's a goofy thing, add more traffic. If you can't fertilize, if you're not getting enough golf traffic, think about this for a second. We didn't go on a championship tee, and I would like to do that. But in my experience, and I did it at Rosedale yesterday, you go on a tee that's not used very much, that's fertilized every single time the tee fertilizer tank goes out there. The championship tee that 5 guys play on 3 times a year is a trampoline.
Yep.
Because you're putting on nitrogen, you're not getting traffic, you're managing organic matter like everywhere else. I'm assuming all the tees get cored and sanded like everything else, right? So my feeling is that's a pretty easy equation. A lot of N, no traffic equals statch. So if you just take that logic and work it through in other places where you get traffic, the game you're playing is, I only want as much growth as I need to keep up with the traffic that I'm getting. Any more growth is a waste. Yep. It's going into organic matter production, which means I got to throw sand. Because the reality is you have to do some dilution, especially on these surfaces, because the microbial activity up here is so limited. I mean, you're just at, what'd you say, 61 degrees? We took a thermometer. 61, yeah. So you're at 61 degrees. So now, in the next couple of weeks, especially you're going to get some heat coming, you're going to see a surge of growth, especially from your bent grass, which is probably like for you, like us, looking at us for the last 2 months. Like, okay, I'm going to try to grow, but I got nothing here. The bent grass, we just stare at it. That's where pigments have come in. these early season use of pigments has really sort of stimulated it. And what I like about Civitas is you got that pigment plus you got that oil that's really stimulating growth very effectively, encouraging more solar panels, more leaf tissue to persist, giving you more density. And so there's a lot of benefits associated with that. That's why I think we can lower our N rate sometimes.
But it also helps with senescing as well. I've noticed
This is the thing, for
When-
sure.
when the plant is just, it's sleepy, it's very lethargic, especially in April
That's
and
right.
early May. And you just see it gets all that traffic. 'Cause
That's
now
right.
we're mowing and everything else. And that senescing plant, or those senescing leaves just are more protected.
That's right.
Yeah.
They
And
just
look-
hang
they
around
just hang
longer, and
around,
that's
they look a
exactly
little bit
what
better.
this is exactly what we're looking at. And so any time where growth is going to be limited like that, especially in the spring and in the fall, where pigments also bring heat to the system, right? To have a twofold benefit there. That senescence has to do with some ethylene trigger. There must be some ethylene trigger. I'm speculating. That in the plant that the oil is stimulating, that's allowing those leaves to stick around, right? You look at a plant, let me just take a plant, it's nice and simple, if I can get one. We actually never look at a single grass plant, but there's a single grass plant. And you know, that leaf in the middle is the new leaf, and then you've got a second leaf and a third leaf, and you see I peeled it away, but these leaves down here have already peeled off and senesced. When you put Civitas on, these leaves they just stick around longer and makes for a more robust plant.
Well, you can see a big difference between there and where that doesn't get Civitas.
Oh, so this has Civitas on it.
It's only because of a bit of the overspray, right?
Okay, so it stops roughly here. Okay, everything that's in the tank is sprayed here too, right?
Correct, yes.
So this is getting everything.
This is, well, I mean, yeah, it gets a little bit depending on the direction of the sprayer and where the
But
overlap
this is exactly what we're thinking about. This is exactly what we see as the Civitas effect. It's not bad. It's exactly what you would expect to see if things have been dry in areas where you're not going to throw a lot of water at this time of year. You see the brown leaves that just stick around because the plant isn't growing very much. When you get Civitas in that system, or even nitrogen in that system, where the plant starts to rejuvenate growth, you can see that there are less senescing leaves. This is as clear as it can get, right, Matt? Yeah. I mean, honestly, we sort of stumbled into it, but that's exactly what, well, I got to tell you, I mean, some of the funniest things we've learned, Matt and I have been working together a really long time. We've seen this happen when irrigation systems break. People were convinced we were going in and sabotaging things. We work with a baseball field down in Philly, I think, in the Philly area, right? Yeah, down in the Philly area, we sprayed Civitas, and there was an edge where they stopped, and this irrigation system broke. They didn't water for like a month. And they didn't even notice it right away because some of the area was still green. And they go out there and they're like, here's where we treated Civitas and here's where we didn't. And it was, you could see where the drought stress had happened and the Civitas was put down. But now I want to go into the approach here. Come on. We were talking about this earlier and we saw a surface over there that had some ants. We'll bump into a few worms. Here you have what is suspected to be a root pathogen, maybe take-all patch going on here. And I just want to say that over the years, we are using less and less harsh chemistry. I mean, I've been coming up here. I remember coming up here and you were still spraying calichlor. We were still spraying mercury when my career started. So when you know, and before that, we used some pretty good metals and some pretty nasty stuff. And as we've used less persistent, less toxic materials, soil life has improved because we got a ton of organic matter, and organic matter is nothing but food for the microbes, right? We started looking at, we have a couple of, at what they call native lawns, where our botanic garden has found all these, native species and planted it, and it's been there for like 5 or 6 years. They mow it once a year. It's very low growing. They did an article about it in the New York Times. Everybody's all excited how great this is. We looked at the soil biology, and the first thing we found was there's way more microbial activity in the managed lawn than there is in this native lawn. There's no organic matter in this native lawn because native systems are inherently derelict. The reason natives have an advantage is the soils generally suck. They don't get fertilized. They don't get watered unless it's rainfall. And so a lot of times native plants don't do well in our managed areas because they can't compete with things that, are better when they're managed, right? So one of the things we've seen very clearly is the soil life is improving on golf courses around the world as we become less reliant on more persistent materials. We're not reliant on them. Now, take-all patch is a good example of something that is actually a bit worrisome. We've had some recent outbreaks of what we thought was summer patch and then we thought was take-all on the bunker banks on the Bethpage Black course where we're going to play the Ryder Cup this fall. This started about 3 years ago. And I got to tell you, much like all you guys, we know when to treat for summer patch. We know when to treat for take-all patch. And we were not having success with a variety of chemistries. Now, the first thing I thought was, you don't see it so much here. This is a brilliant bunker job. But when you're at Rosedale or you're at the Black course where architects have decided they're going to roll the grass onto a 90-degree angle and challenge you a little bit more to grow grass on a 90-degree angle, as if it's not hard to just grow grass on flat surfaces. And so we've really struggled just getting products applied to these surfaces, right? How do you get a root fungicide or a drench to get into an area that's sloped like this? It's not easy. We've gone to high-pressure backpack sprayers to blow it into them, and that still wasn't working. So we start taking samples, start sending it to the diagnostic lab. They're like, yeah, it's summer patch, it's take-all. And then Bruce Clark retires. You know Bruce Clark from Rutgers University. Bruce retires, and a former student of mine who went on to study with Paul Koch at Wisconsin got Bruce's job, Ming-Yi Chow. He has molecular techniques at his disposal. He takes our samples and he finds whenever you get summer patch, it typically is Magnaporthe poei. There's 6 pathogens that they identified years ago when they first studied it, but they never found any of these other ones in most samples because they didn't have the molecular markers to do it. Well, now we do. It turns out we don't have any Magnaporthe. We have a little bit of Magnaporthe, but we got this other Sclerodopolis or some stupid thing that requires the fungicides to be applied at a different time. I'm not saying it's a new organism, it's an organism that's been there, but for some reason this organism is eluding our traditional chemical control. So I think what I'd like to see everybody do is to, when you think you have suspected root samples, send something to Rutgers, and I'll be happy to connect you with those guys to see what you got. Right? Because I know you are intentionally spending some time thinking about soil biology here, and you've even applied some manganese sulfate, yes?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
So as part of the spring, but you don't do any drench applications anymore on these fairways. No more.
We haven't done one on greens either for about 5 seasons now.
So no fungicide drenches,
No.
other than, it's all topical stuff, right? You don't water, that fungicide we are on there, not
Correct.
getting watered in.
No.
It's for
No.
foliar disease.
It's for foliar
So you're not
disease.
really doing anything to try to control these root pathogens,
No.
other than add
We've
all
never
this.
really had an issue. We used to years ago on greens.
On greens.
We had some Pythium.
In the early part of the
early-
sand greens,
early
for
part of
sure.
the sand greens.
But so I
We've had
wonder,
summer patch here in my earlier years as well.
no more,
No more.
okay? Out here, where you've been applying this stuff,
Yeah,
makes you wonder, right?
it does.
It makes you wonder.
But we're also not putting out that DMI in May that we
right.
normally have done in the past,
That's
right?
right.
So now we're really, the first fungicidal application will just be for dollar spot.
That's right.
And anthracnose has been the target.
That's right.
right.
So the question is, what's going on with take-all at your properties? Take-all a problem?
Starting to be.
Start.
Just in the last couple of years.
Really? Have you changed anything, maybe?
Nope. Just in isolated areas. And there's maybe 3 fairways across 22 acres that are showing signs. And they're just exactly. When I walked up to this, I'm like, huh.
Looks just like what you got. There we go. Very good. That's another good reason we all cut together, so you can see everybody's struggling about the same things. I wonder wonder what we think about that, though, right? I mean, I would say it does beg the question about, well, if you're just drenched, but you're drenching and still having the problem. You're using a fungicide and still having a problem. You're not, and so you think, okay, I get a little breakthrough. Maybe the manganese sulfate is preventing it from really sucking out, but for sure...
This is about as bad as it'll get.
Yeah.
I mean, if we got a week of 30-degree weather, it might go back a little bit, but usually by July, once that first application's out, within a week, we're... Like, no one's noticing it other than myself.
That's exactly right. Now, here's again, the good news is, I just took a sample. You can see the native soil here, which is very earthy. Looks like it's not gonna, I mean, it's got a lot of clay in it. I can see almost a gray clay when you're into it. But there is the sand top dressing that they embarked upon all those years ago.
They wanted to start top dressing approaches,
Yeah.
And wanted to see how things would perform, to basically start budgeting for a full-blown fairway top dressing program.
Which they went for.
Which they didn't
go
No.
for.
So what we did it for a couple seasons, and honestly saw a lot more localized dry spot developing in our approaches.
Mm-hmm.
And once we extrapolated the costs, they're like, nah, let's
Beautiful.
kibosh that idea.
Yeah.
And now it's resulted in increased thatch. We always have more thatch in the areas that were top dressed. And also we're still struggling with localized dry spot in a couple areas for sure.
Sand top dressing of fairways it's a precarious decision. It's like you're marrying somebody you're just not really sure about, you know. And I can tell you, I'm married to the second woman for 35 years. The first one was a year and a half. I can tell you, when you're not sure, it's best to maybe not do it, right? Because then, you know, you really sort of deal with it. And I think one of the challenges I see here is when you get into this plug, you can feel the line. So that is the area that has resulted from the top dressing. Because then it breaks off here and you're into the subsurface where there's been a little bit of mixing for sure. So you've got really straight or sand organic matter up here. And again, listen, the only reason we build things out of sand is to drain. Full stop. We never considered any other thing other than they need to drain, because guess what? You can't play golf course. Well, I guess you can. You saw Oakmont. Yeah. That poor guy didn't get relief. Should he have gotten relief? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
No question? 2 people said no. What do you say? No?
I say yeah.
You say yes? Could have got relief, okay? Now, you guys are all nice Canadians, not miserable Pittsburghians, right, Matt? What? So here's what I can tell you. Here's what I can tell you. In my opinion, my opinion, I hear a chatter about take-all. I hear it really doesn't get any worse than this. You can see the POA coming in there. And if this then subsides as the heat comes and the plants grow out of it, the best thing to do is just nothing. Just now, if year over year you're seeing it on more areas, if year over year where it is it's getting worse, now you have to start to think about, okay, what do I do here, right? Because you've been applying a lot of things to encourage the biology, and certainly in sand-based systems where organic matter is more plentiful. There's just more pores in more places. When you give it fertilizer and you got a nice sand with a lot of big pores in it, man, those roots are happy to fill it up, right? And a lot of times you see a lot of plugs don't go very deep. They just stay where it is. You're rooted past it because I think your cultivation program must have been encouraging. Your watering program has encouraged it. What about wetting agents? Can you talk for a second about the way you use wetting agents out here?
We use wetting agents depending on the season and the stress of the time, but greens typically are every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks.
Sometimes we try to push that in the shoulder seasons to a month.
Okay.
Tees and fairways are monthly, regardless, more just budgetary restraints. We can't really
and getting
afford
out to
more.
spray all the area, right?
Getting out to spray.
Okay.
But they are done monthly. usually starting in May. So we'll put out an application in May, which this has had.
Okay.
And then we'll do another one in June and July and basically do it that way.
So maybe it got a little dry this weekend, and this showed up on the heels of drought?
It did get dry. So, going into the weekend, I knew this was coming.
Yeah.
We did get Civitas out all last week.
Okay.
And the weekend was supposed to be cool, right? It was supposed to be only a high of 20 or whatever. I was like, we'll be perfect. We'll cruise right in. Everything's going to look good. And I came in yesterday morning, obviously, and, I sent it to him. I said, it's everywhere, right? So a little bit of drought stress, and that's always what happens, right? The heat comes, things dry down. Those roots we know are compromised. They're not pulling up the moisture as well. And we see what we see, right?
So do you, since you said it looks similar to yours, do you notice it more during the dry period?
Correlation, absolutely. Like I was just saying, these high skies that came on Thursday with the wind blowing, zero humidity. Yeah. It exacerbates the whole thing. So at Saturday I looked, I'm like, okay, here it comes Sunday. I mean, you try to put water to it, but you're dealing with water quality on top of that.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of things.
So you got bad water?
Yeah, I would assume you.
How's your water?
It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you filter some of it. Some of it's got road runoff in it, though.
Yeah. We've kind of got everything. So it's half decent, but it has got a lot of bicarbs in it.
Okay, and sodium?
Sodium's not too bad.
Sodium?
Fish and chips.
No kidding, sodium. Okay. Do you notice the cracking in your soils?
Well, if we get an area where we're irrigating a little bit less, you'll start seeing it, and you'll start actually, through a really dry season, you can actually look at the profile and see a sodium layer in there. So wetting agents and everything else, I'm listening to you once a month. Like today, I'm looking at rain tomorrow, probably. So we're putting wetting agent down today to try and get a flush. Right. See if we can get a free go.
That's exactly right.
We did the wetting agent yesterday on the greens because of that same sort of thing, and they got a heavy water last night. As well. So they're obviously wet and softer. This weekend I played Sunday for Father's Day, and they were cement. Like there was some drought stress out there, but they dry up and firm up really, really nice. The biggest thing that I've noticed with the biologicals is buffering, is sodium buffering. I do honestly believe that it does
help you with some of the
buffering.
sodium in the water, for sure. It's very interesting. I mean, that's entirely possible. If it does nothing else but make water move through better. I mean, certainly, a good microbial community is going to aggregate soil. Aggregates give you the nice benefit, what do I mean when I say aggregate, right? An aggregate is where you start to, you break it up a little bit. You see how they hang on like that? And when you have a blend, as soon as you see those sorts of things happening in your soil, anybody comes in and says you don't have a healthy soil. Let me tell you something. You don't have aggregates like that if you don't have a healthy soil. Those are microbes working around a root, creating some gel that then brings soil particles together. And in that aggregate is that microbe's happy space, right? This is where I think over time, as we start to understand more about this, we'll be able to strategically use things like biochar and other sorts of things, but now it's all taking a flyer on that stuff. There's just not enough data to know. Everybody might talk to you about it, but at the end of the day, that biochar will create these micropores that will allow more soil life to sustain itself under the harsh conditions. We dry it out so it plays good. Microbes don't like when we dry it out. One of the reasons we think rolling controls dollar spot, Paul Giordano said, was because by pressing it down, it creates a uniform moisture layer at the surface that allows antagonistic organisms to bug the dollar spot, and therefore you have less dollar spot when you roll. Some of it obviously is related to dew control, but we've taken dew off in different ways and it doesn't work the same way. Like we can remove dew sometimes and still get dollar spot. So there's something about the physical rolling itself that we haven't fully understood. It could be, there's been some evidence that rolling triggers plant defenses like mowing. When you wound a plant or you roll on a plant, that can't be good. The plant's like, uh-oh, and then boom, it has its defense response. That is exactly the same thing Civitas does. Civitas encourages the plant to act like it's under attack, even when it's not. That's why it does better when there's stress. In fact, a lot of guys, for many years, we sprayed a lot of Civitas in places where the grass was growing great, and people are like, what am I buying this thing for? I got pretty good grass over there. And so what we say, you get the most out of it when you use less or when you have stress. That's where actually Civitas tends to benefit you the most. All right, let's wander down to the putting green down there. Come on, Timber. No laying around, buddy. Let's let them play. Yeah. Let's let them play.
We'll let them hit.
We'll hang out here, and we'll talk about the natural areas.
Don't go in them. There's text notes.
Well, here's the thing. When we were at Rosedale yesterday, I can talk while are we safe here? Are these guys Shankopotamus? Could be Shankopotamus. It is. Look at. Oh boy, we're in trouble now. Okay, so we're here. We can have a conversation about his native areas. Nigel, you're the bird box guy?
Yep.
How many?
53.
Tell me about the bird life out here. Is it uniform?
Mostly swallows. We have a few families of bluebirds, and the other boxes have wrens in them. So swallows by far the most populous, probably 85% of the boxes.
You get the occasional red-winged blackbird?
Not in the boxes though. We have lots of them.
Not in the boxes. Yeah. They love the ponds, the bulrushes.
Okay, good.
We have lots of those.
So you've got diversity. Huh?
They feed on golfers.
They feed on golfers.
There's killdeers up at the driving range. Family of killdeers all the time up there.
You wonder how that species of bird has survived.
They're wonderful.
They put the eggs right in the middle of the driveway. And then they walk off with their leg like this so that you think they're wounded. It's a very strange behavior. So you guys have been around here a long time. Were the native areas always you said they were overgrown for a little bit. Now we're getting them under control. Has the bird life changed since we've been cutting them down?
No.
I've been doing it for 4 years now and it hasn't changed, no.
I don't think
So when did they start getting cut down? These native
Well,
areas?
they've always been cut, just it was usually more on an annual basis. Whereas now, especially with the ticks, that's another thing that we're trying to manage is numbers and pace of play, because they're in here. Thistles were really bad. People were complaining about getting thistles in their legs, slowing down play, tick exposure.
So what's the management of these areas now?
They get mowed twice in the summer and then once at the end. So early May, this has had one mowing. It'll get a second mowing right around July, and then we leave them we encourage the milkweed to be young, so that when those butterflies are coming and migrating, it's fresh milkweed rather than milkweed that's this tall.
Because this matters.
This matters to the butterflies. They prefer a younger, more supple plant for feeding, and then we'll mow everything down again in October, November.
How long does it take to mow all of it?
Weeks.
Weeks. Many guys, one guy.
It's one operator, one machine, and it's
one
a slow
operator,
process.
one machine. Is it the Ventrac?
Ventrac, yes. Ventrac with a tough deck. We mow it at about 6 inches height. And so that area there has been mowed a little bit better. I mean, we can see some of the areas you'll see I've had a second mowing. But again, it's whatever we can. Sometimes we can get at it right in the morning.
So
sometimes it's an afternoon job.
I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, really, you can mow this into rough. Are the members are okay? I mean, this is pretty close.
That's all been part of the Autobahn, right? And Blair did a big part of that over the first 15 years here, was expanding these areas, letting them mature, letting them naturalize, and then
because previously they were
all mowed. Like there's so many places here that I used to have to trim under. I mean, all these pine trees we had to trim. This was all manicured property cut with for rough.
And then in 2008 was when the Autobahn thing started.
Well, that's 2004, 2005 is when Blair started.
Okay.
And then they got when was it? Was it 2000 and?
I don't remember the date. The plaques are up in the clubhouse.
6, I think, somewhere in around there is when they became Autobahn certified. It was a year or two before Blair started, and then he kind of just continued with the program and expanded.
And this is a big part of it, managing these naturalized areas.
A lot of large areas that were used to all be mowed are no longer. We get to down to 2 behind 8. We can see more of these areas that normally were all mowed at rough height.
And one of the things that we won't see, but I got to see because I got dropped off down at the maintenance shop, was a equipment washing area that is really fascinating. I was chatting with your mechanic.
Yeah.
He manufactured something to go underneath the decks, to wash the decks
Yeah.
more effectively. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
And then you have a curb system and a drain
Yeah.
that you collects the debris, but then eventually the water is pumped up. Your maintenance facility is down here, yeah?
Yeah.
And then it's pumped up to this reservoir after it goes through some filters. Audubon must have loved you for doing this.
Yeah.
I've not seen too many places go to these lengths to deal with the wash water when most people are running it by the edge of a hill in hopes it falls over the edge.
The wash water does go out. We remove all the
Debris.
Debris.
The wash water, he said, goes through the septic system back into the reservoir. Is that incorrect?
Our wastewater
From the washing of the equipment.
from the equipment goes out.
Goes
That goes
out.
out. We tried to and couldn't get it because our sewage plant couldn't accept that much volume of water. It wasn't rated for that much extra water. So the wash water does exit.
After you take the debris out of
Yes,
it,
so it's-
does it go through a filter of any
It just
kind?
goes through just a catch basin that settles.
Yes.
And the water comes up, goes out, and then the sediment all stays, and then we got to shovel all that out.
Okay, so that
that's-
water does not, it just
No.
gets dispersed on
It's
the
all
ground?
it's all the gray water from the from the maintenance facility, plus the back shop, plus the clubhouse. All of that sewage water,
Yes.
that goes through our processing.
That goes through
And
the
then
processing.
that gets recycled.
But not
and put
the
out.
equipment water.
Not the equipment wash, no. Unfortunately, no. We tried to do that, but it just couldn't work financially and just with logistics of our sewage plant. They just wouldn't approve it.
The local town sewage plant, not the club doesn't have a sewage
No,
plant.
the club has a has its own sewage treatment plant on site with bacteria,
Was this
biology,
with the
and
requirement
UVs.
to build this place?
It was, yeah.
Because
So-
it was a sensitive area?
Because we were originally on a septic tank, a septic bed, and when they redid the clubhouse, they didn't want that anymore. So they made us put in a sewage plant that now treated all that water, and then redistribute it back
Is
to
this
reuse.
common in Canada to do something like this? It is.
Yeah.
To have to put in your own septic system for your operation.
Yeah, like sprawl
Depending on
kind of
location
catches
of
up
where
with these
you're-
urban areas. I mean, when you build in this area, that's what you have to do. And then, I mean, I have a course on Trafalgar Road, main thoroughfare, and we have to truck in water. We don't have water or gas supplied, and we're in Milton.
Yeah, so we're on a well here as well. We don't have city water or
No.
city
So you don't,
sewage.
are you paying for water? You're paying for water. Ouch. Yeah, it sounds like it hurts. But how much are you paying annually? You mind?
I'm just new to this place, and I'm just sort of watching the water trucks go in and out, and I'm asking the super, I'm like, how often are these water, like, you know, yeah, so I mean, the number is staggering.
They're literally, okay, you weren't kidding. You're trucking water to
I
a
mean,
golf
for
course.
irrigation, we draw from the 16 mile, but for clubhouse operations, washing golf carts, for the turf building, for washing our equipment, all that.
You truck in
trucking
potable water.
Yeah.
Potable water you can drink.
Yeah, and the superintendent's house too. All have
Okay,
trucking.
so you irrigate with different water. You're not pumping, because I mean, would you imagine having a pump?
Oh, no, but yeah, just what uses, you know, in downtown Milton, what you think are just services that you would have, they're not there yet.
Because you were there first.
Yeah.
And the pipes weren't brought out there.
Yeah, they're
Are they
all-
going to bring the pipes out there?
Close, I think we're within a couple of years.
Okay, this is very interesting. Okay, those guys are clear? Let's wander over there. I don't have to tell a bunch of golf course superintendents that, you know, whenever you're involved in projects, right? Project management and oversight takes a lot of time. I mean, bringing people from the outside onto your golf course to come and do this kind of work is pretty standard, and I'm really pleased. Listen, I start out every session these days by saying it's a good time to be in golf. Golf is booming. Now, let's hope we don't make the mistake of going building a whole bunch of golf courses, because people are going to slow down playing golf, and we'll still have the right number of golf courses. What we don't want is a surplus again that we got to close. I mean, you know, for 15 years in the States, we were closing 200-300 golf courses per year. We went from 18,000 18-hole equivalents to we're around 14,000 18-hole equivalents now in the last 15 years. Golf, the pandemic, I can't stress it enough, absolutely saved golf. And what's interesting is people have stayed. It's 5 years since the damn thing, and they're still playing, right? And then maybe, I think we were talking earlier, that maybe price increases may start to limit play a little bit, who knows? But at the same time, I thought was maybe smart golf people who run golf operations, fold sweaters, I don't want to be, criticize them too much, fold sweaters may say, well, I don't care if less people play. If I charge more, I make more money, and good for you guys. Because 4,000 more rounds is 4,000, it's 2,000 more carts, right? It's a whole nother bunch of people playing, and they're going to create wear and tear or get in the way of you having to get your work done. So all of these things are realities. This project was already advanced, but the question becomes, here's my question. As a superintendent, what I wonder about is, if you don't do this and you start to have issues, they're going to say, well, why didn't you use the latest and greatest technology to build these bunkers? So I see a lot of superintendents, I see this, all the high-end joints putting in new greens, because of the stupid Masters in Augusta with the sub-air, everybody's got to put sub-air in now. Everybody in the Metro New York area that's putting in new putting greens, Frank, I know I got to put the connection in because the golfers want it. Another $500,000 across the golf course for something that probably will never get used, and even if it is used, is not actually effective for what you want it to do. This is the same thing. Yeah. You got to do it, right?
You got to, and we did a test bunker that's now 5 years old, up on 18, really steep faces.
With this?
With this, and it has performed.
Perfect.
100%. The washouts that we would experience are just totally disheartening for the staff. Tons of labor. You get one storm, you spend, 3-4 days rebuilding them. And the next storm comes, they're all washed out again. They're out of play. So, whereas those bunkers up there, the golf course would be obliterated, and those bunkers would be 10 minutes, you push a little sand up on the face, no washouts, no contamination, and you move on. So that's the biggest thing, is because these bunkers, because they're so steep, the McBroom loves the steep faces, we were just...
You had to do it.
We were just getting destroyed. And then the sand's no good, then the sand doesn't drain, and it's contaminated and everything else, and it just compounds, right?
So it is the design. At Rosedale, almost all those bunkers are flat.
Yeah.
But his grass faces are steep. So he's got a lot more labor on the grass faces. And this is what I was talking about earlier at Bethpage, where we've got these big fingers that come down into here, and they're even steeper. You think McBroom likes it. You should see Reese Jones, that mad guy. Like this, with these big things. And it's just very hard to treat this with a soil dredge. I mean, you put on too much water, it's just gonna run off. So you gotta go, zip, wait, zip, wait. We have all of the bunkers, I don't know how they are here, but our bunkers at Bethpage all have mister heads around them. Some guys are using drip, right? Drip is the other option. Most superintendents don't like drip because they can't see it. I'm a big fan of drip, and we've done some work out at the Vineyard Club in Martha's Vineyard with drip and on a couple of tees, because their problem was they don't have herbicides to spray. They put sprinkler heads in tees that water all the native areas that are getting filled with crabgrass and weeds. So we put drip in the tees. Superintendent was like, I don't know if it's working. We had them install a riser, a sprinkler body. When the drip is on, an orange thing comes up just to show it's on. No water comes out of it. It just pushes this orange little indicator tube up, and it says the drip is working, because superintendents want to see the water going. And I love when a superintendent says, oh, the maintenance, blah, 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 blah. Are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? How much maintenance does an irrigation? You guys are pulling whatever hair you got left out to keep your irrigation systems running. Don't tell me it's even more complicated because you can't see it. It's complicated no matter where it is. Now they're putting that whole, how about the infinity heads? Yay? Nay? Yes? You're right. I mean, it's a big hole. It's a big hole. And a lot of stuff in there now. Okay, let's wander out of here.
What about that poor man's version of just a granular, like a wetting agent on a bunker face? It just really helps out. I've had some success with just using a granular form of
100%. So when we were at Rosedale, this is very interesting. Jeff, much like here, prides himself on not using and overboarding, even though that place is meticulously manicured. He said he prides himself on not over-fertilizing, stuff like that. Southwest facing slopes, he does everything, granular wetting agent, more nitrogen, fungicide, whatever he needs to do to keep them looking good. It is very difficult to grow grass that looks perfect on a slope. And the challenge too is, if you put the bluegrass tall fescue in here, which is what a lot of clubs have gone to because the tall fescue does better maybe with the sand splashing on it than the bluegrass. If you don't maintain it right, the tall fescue gets big and clumpy, and golfers hate that. The leaves will start getting wider, it holds up the ball. It really aggravates this situation. So I honestly say, and I've done a bunch of products with Gil Hansen, Jim Wagner, and I fight with them constantly about this. They fell in love, and thankfully you're not doing it here, but they fell in love with, right here, they'll roll the grass over, right? Roll it over, and then they want the grass to grow right here, straight 90-degree angle in this much of an area.
And we did that on the test bunker. So we did those ones we did a couple years ago. We did one rolled with the burlap bags and one with the bunker boards. And within the first season, they looked, and that's why we said there's no way. One, it's a whole extra added cost, and two, they're way more difficult to maintain. And unless you have a guy that go around with scissors, I mean,
it's a pain in the ass.
It's just not worth it.
It's
so
impossible.
we decided not to do it.
All right. All right. Questions? How we doing? Let's go look at a tee. So you can see, I mean, that's where you started. That looks like where you started top dressing, or where the organic matter. The same thing here as I saw in that approach. That you can see there's this little layer of organic material between the top area and the soil that it's rooted into. And, you know, one would say, well, that's a problem, except look at all these white roots down in here. I mean, you know, just because you find organic matter, oops, sorry, lefty, attaboy, give it a rat. Oh, we hit that high. Nice. Good. Just because you find organic matter levels in here doesn't mean it's bad. We don't really know what a high organic matter level is in that top 2 centimeters because we haven't been taking enough data to know how much you should have and how they perform when you have certain levels of organic matter. So lots to learn here, but how long have you been rolling them the way you're rolling them?
Just last year.
So you just started this process?
Last year.
Okay.
The year before we were dabbling with it, I did a couple trials trying to convince Blair of its worth.
Yes.
And we saw value in it, and then made that transition last year to full blown.
Okay.
The other big change is we bought a new roller for our greens. So we bought the big Tri-Salsco,
Right.
and they offered us, $500 for the old one. It's just like, well, let's keep it. Now we've got one for rolling tees, right? Because it's slower. So now we can roll greens. They wanted to roll greens on weekends. That was the biggest problem, right? So we can roll greens on weekends, but we either need another body and another roller, or we need a new roller that can roll them faster. That's why we went to the 3-wheel or 3-drum Salsco.
And it adds, and one guy can get it done on the
One guy
weekends.
can get it done on the weekends now. So now we can cut and roll 7 days a week.
Beautiful. There you go. Simple as that. So, I come to a back tee like this that kid didn't even play. He looks like a pretty good hitter. Doesn't get a lot of traffic, but honestly, this is really good. I mean, this is much firmer than I thought it would be, than I usually find. This is this is a guaranteed first place I go to on a walk and talk. Let's go to a championship tee because it's an easy place to talk about organic matter management. It makes the point very clearly. All right, let's keep walking. One more thing here, ants.
Yeah, go for it.
Ants. So, one of the things we would do because I've got a soil insect ecologist at my disposal, he'd tell me, okay, Frank, I see the ants here. What I do is get your bait and sprinkle it out here and along the edge there to control ants here. Because they have to get back. Now, you might sprinkle a little bit here in hopes that the ants will take it and bring it back. Huh? Yeah, it's a bait. So all of the, like spinosad, which is in the States is an OMRI listed product. Do you sell spinosad here? You don't have it. Okay, because we have it as an organic material that it's an OMRI listed product because it's naturally derived, and we're able to do it like that. But I think the guys that spray it spray Match Point, which is a 3-way combination of a pyrethroid and one other product. But I got to tell you, it's multiple applications a year. And again, you got to spray those areas away from the surfaces where the ants are. Spraying the ants directly. And you said this is your biggest problem.
Ants is the biggest insect problem we have.
Insect,
here, for sure.
yeah. I mean, for us, it's the same.
We blew up the serious problem.
And you know, sometimes like it gets worse when it's wet because they drowned. And so they're looking for places to come up to get out and get some air into the operation. But you know, in this case, we don't know. We don't study these things. There's very few people. This has always been considered a nuisance. But I got to tell you, once you get a few of these, and it's not like worms where it dries and you can brush it. These mounds literally mound up in there. Now, one of the things we're experimenting with, I talked about it yesterday in the lead up to Nigel's robot discussion. Our soil insect ecologist, Kyle Wickings, has stumbled into, okay, when we have grub problems, when we have white grub problems, you know, the white grubs in the soil, typically we have high populations of white grubs in the soil, and the turf, you don't notice a problem until the raccoons and the skunks start peeling it back. So we don't really have a problem with grubs, we got a problem with the vertebrates. So Kyle said, let's try to study ways of discouraging the vertebrates, the raccoons and skunks. Those animals hear the chewing of the grubs on the roots of the plant. And it is a particular frequency that chewing sound makes. He was injecting sound from a boat speaker into the ground to neutralize the sound so they couldn't hear him. It was spotty, but in concept it actually worked in some places where we have big worm problems. Now, he found out, and in studying this, found out that worms can sense bird vibrations on the surface. So now we're starting to look at these autonomous mowers to run where the worms are, mow during the night or use it to mow an area, discouraging the worms from coming to the surface because they think the birds are there. And they're not going to come up unless they're drowning. Unless they're totally drowning, they won't come up. When they're drowning, they come. I mean, we got birds through all of our landscapes now because the soil is completely saturated. And the worms have to get oxygen, so they got to come to the surface. And then the birds get them. So the birds and the worms have figured something out. And the robot may be a way to prevent worm damage. Go figure. All based on just using sound to alter something you wouldn't think of in your wildest imagination about sound. Now the question is, should we play some Led Zeppelin or some Police or something else down there that might encourage different things? But these are the kinds of problems. Honestly, 10 years ago, maybe you saw an ant problem here and there. I think, again, as we've used less persistent materials, these problems become more and more. And we haven't figured out. There's obviously ants everywhere. There's a balance. Yep. There's a balance that these things get out of whack and you know, I mean, here's what I can tell you. Here's ants too. Here's ants. You see what I mean? Here's ants. Here's ants. So what I mean? So we think it's there, but it's out here as well. It's everywhere. It just bothers us on the low-cut grass. All right, come on, Timber, let's go.